Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're joining. And welcome to another episode of Intercultural Conversations. I'm just going to let a couple of people join in. Oops, dropped the pen. Up. Hi. Hi, Jay. Hi, angry art student. I'm not very angry today, but we're going to be talking about certain things that could make us angry. Hi, Pooja. Hi, Raj. Hi, Swapnil. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in. So today, we're going to be talking... Hi, Rahul. I'm good. How are you doing? Hello. Mahan Insan. Thank you for joining in, Mahan Insan. Okay, so now that people have joined in, today we're going to be talking about something that is a bit difficult for me to speak about, honestly. It's something that is a taboo in many cultures. It is still a taboo in my head, which ideally it shouldn't be. And I was just talking to a friend before this, and I don't know, my hands don't go cold before a live, but today it did. I'm assuming it's because there's so much of shame and so much of fear and so much of conditioning that is actually attached to the subject, and the subject is sex. The subject is sex in a cultural context, yes, but we're also going to be talking about female pleasure. And like one of the incidences that comes to my mind where I kind of relate the expression of sensuality to shame is when I discuss these subjects with my close friends. For example, here in Bombay, where I live, there's a place called Bandstand, and that's where you usually see, couples sitting with each other, engaging in some sort of PDA. And many people, including some of my friends, not all of them, seem to be a bit taken aback by that. Right? That why do they have to do it in public? And I would always psychologically, reason with them, like, of course, they have to express themselves and they have to express their sensuality. Where else are they going to do? Bombay is so expensive. And their problem was not that they were doing it in public. Their problem was that they're doing it in front of them. And that would lead to a rabbit hole of discussion about sensuality and sex and what that means for us and what that meant for me. And there was a tinge of judgment when I was okay with that idea of, openly expressing what you felt, especially sexually. And then as I grew up, and, of course, when you're in school, you're not really taught about sex as pleasure. Forget female pleasure. Sex was very, reproductive, and there's only one reason why you have sex. And of course that I had to unlearn all of those things as I grew up, and as I evolved into a woman, I had to teach all of myself that, but it was a scary journey, and it still is. And I think the idea of sex can be so different generationally. It can be so different from one gender to the other. It can be my idea of sex as a person grown up in an urban setting is so different from a person who grew up in a rural setting. Internationally, I was in France for some time. The idea of sex is very different than what I grew up with too. So I definitely wanted to address this, but I had been delaying this conversation or this topic for some time because I think I wanted to be vulnerable and open and honest enough. And I was not really finding the right guest for it, to be honest. Of course, until a couple of days ago, where I reached out to our guest who's going to be joining us. Her name is Janani Suresh. Janani has her own podcast. It's called Not Allowed, which I love, by the way, because I love the title especially. It's because it's like a slap in your face. I'm going to talk about everything that I was not allowed to talk about, especially when it comes to dating, and especially when it comes to female pleasure and sex and other kind of, what people would assume as frivolous, she kind of decodes that through her journey of how or what she had to go through in order to be able to talk about things that we are not allowed to talk about, which I love. And she's extremely funny. When I go through her Instagram stories, I'm usually just laughing and crying at the same time because it's relatable, but it's so funny at the same time. So yes, without further ado, I'm going to be adding Janani to the live. Just give me a second, please. Sending her an invite.
Hello.
Hi, Janani. How are you doing?
Good. It's so nice to meet you. I love that we're both wearing off shoulders. I was like, look at this.
Yes.
For
That was on purpose. I was like, if I don't talk about sex, I should actually look sexy. And it so it so happens that yes, and you know, when I add you, so my dress kind of hides now that I'm noticing. It shouldn't look like I'm not wearing anything just because I'm talking about sex. But it's completely fine too,
It's
honestly
fine.
speaking.
Yeah, anything to get the views sometimes. I'm like, fine. Why not?
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Oh, it's so
How are
nice to
you?
be here. I'm good. I'm very
You
excited.
are?
Thank you for all of the super nice things you were saying. I was like here just being like, oh my God. So cool.
It's really inspiring because I think when I reached out to you also, I said that, you know, I want to say all of the things that you're saying, but I think it just requires so much of letting go and, you know,
Yeah.
so much of overcoming of your fears to
Yeah.
be able to say that because you're on a social media platform. The one thing that stops you from telling what you want to say is the judgment. So it's
Yep.
basically one, you're okay with that judgment and being okay with that. I don't know how much internal work is required, but you're doing it and you're
Yeah.
doing it for everybody to see and be inspired by. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, stop. I don't know if it's internal, just like frustration, where you're like, I'm
I
just done with thinking that like I'm weird or that like normal. So it just like took a bit of like, what the heck? Why aren't we talking about this more
yes,
than
I mean,
external?
exactly. Everybody's thinking about it. It's just that nobody's saying it out loud. So
Yeah.
I think it just needs that one or two brave people to come and say it out loud.
Yeah, it's so sad that we have to say like brave, but it is in our
It is.
culture that's 100% brave because we can get like, penalized for saying the most basic stuff or like just freedom of speech. So also there
Yeah.
is construction around me. I'm sorry, I don't know what my neighbors decided at 7 in the evening. So just in case
Um,
it's like some kind
I
of
can
drilling.
hear you. I hope everybody else can hear Janani too, because I can hear you just fine.
Mm. Sorry, I got my
Okay.
stuff. I am
I
ready. I am caffeinated.
have my tea, my
Yeah.
non-alcoholic beverage, which should not have been the case, but hey.
Hey, whatever.
Um, yes, so getting right into it actually, Janani.
Yeah.
Um, just, you know, I want to talk about, of course, you know, female pleasure and sex in general, etc. But when was the first time that you felt like sex was a taboo? Like, you know, consciously it hit you because it's conditioned in us. Like, we
Yeah.
always think about sex as a taboo. But
Yeah.
then when did it, you know, strike you that no, this is wrong?
It was.
Especially
Mhm.
talking about sex and women
Mm.
also, you know,
Yeah.
like in a female context too. Was there this one moment where you're like, ah, this is bullshit?
Yeah. In fact, it was around when I was honestly in college. So I was privileged. Honestly, I attribute a lot of the talking openly about sex to my privilege of having gone abroad and like studied abroad,
Totally.
which I recognize now is seeing that perspective changed a lot within me. And I can't like take away the fact that when I was here, it was a different mentality. And when I went there, it was a different mentality. So when I was here, the first time that we learned about sex was in school, and I was probably like 10 years old. I don't think even I got my
Mm.
kids at that point, so I didn't know. Like, there was a lady who came into the room and she just read out super mechanically. She was just like, sex is when penis penetrates vagina, and like, that's it. There was no conversation about pleasure. There was no conversation about urges. It was just, you know, like, it's scary because when you have a vagina, you're like, wait, something penetrates me. Like, I don't understand what, like, why am I getting like, and then like the whole hymen conversation happens. And so that, for me, I was like, the first introduction was just honestly school, and it was so problematic the way they approached it, because it just was, suddenly you go from like an innocent child to, I have a hymen and I'm gonna have a child if this, you know, phallic object enters my body and just like penetrates. And so I went home and I asked my mom, and I was like, Mom, what the heck is this? And my mom had, what I look back now, I'm like, my mom is very philosophical, and I am very lucky to have parents that are very like open about conversations around sex, which is again another privilege for me. Was my parents are liberal, and that I realize is like part of why I can even, you know, have like a podcast where I can just like talk about shit, and I don't get like, my dad or my mom is not like, hey, don't, you know, talk about it. So when I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, what the heck is sex? Like, this is terrifying. She was like, love. So her philosophical answer was, it's love showcased on a physical level, which I thought was like the most profound way that she described it. But I still grew up with the knowledge that you only had to have it after you got married. And if you had it before you got married, you were damaged goods. Like, it was just not even a question in their mind that, like, you know, virginity, all of that was, you just get married and that's when you experience your, you know, you learn more about yourself sexually. But like, it's really weird that that's the is you get married whenever that is, assuming like early 20s to late 20s, early 30s, and then I get to start enjoying my sexuality. Like, no thanks. With one person, for me at least, I was confused. So when I was in college abroad, I liked this guy, and it just happened, and it was urges that were coming, and I was very like, am I a pervert? Like, what's going on? Like, why am I getting these urges?
There's so much judgment. There's so much judgment involved in even having an urge. So I can completely understand that.
Yeah. The look back, and this is kind of, so I'll be super honest, my first experience was abusive. I don't want to get into like too much like detail because it's a long story, and I'm not like it, but I do think it's important to know that my first experience was not, you know, this candlelit like bedroom with like rose petals, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna take my virginity, which is another topic we can have like on the side.
Like taking it.
It. He is like perforating my, like, you know, saran wrap vagina or whatever like I'm supposedly having. And it was bad because I didn't know my limits. I didn't know like what was okay, and because I didn't know what was the limit or what was like right, because everything was wrong, every urge of mine, every natural, you know, human tendency to want pleasure was wrong. So ended up where someone could take advantage of my lack of knowledge or my innocence, so to speak. And it wasn't like, I mean, I hate to say it wasn't an extreme measure of like abuse. It was in its own way. Again, it's a longer story. But what I'm trying to like highlight is, I think that was the first time I felt guilt and I felt a lot of shame, because what was happening was natural, but I was thinking it was like chi or ganda. I was like thinking like, I'm like damaged goods, I'm never gonna find a husband, like this is just my life. When in fact, honestly, to be so honest, I've only started enjoying sex a year ago when I was 27, and I'm 28 now. The only time that I've been like empowered sexually, and it took so long. It took so much of such a journey to reach like feeling like, hey, I can have sex and it's okay. It's not like, you know,
your life is over. You know, that you're damaged goods, that pleasure is okay, that pleasure is meant to be had, and that you can't. I think that we deny ourselves that pleasure so many times. You know, I've denied it so many times.
Even
just out of
sorry,
because that's the amount of conditioning that I had, that no, if this happens to me, or if I allow myself this pleasure, I'm a bad person. So
Yeah.
I directly, or I'm a person. If I enjoy sex, that means I am of loose character.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds very simple and repetitive now. Many people do talk about that, but they don't understand women. And I don't know about men. I can't speak for them. But I know for a fact that women carry that. Women
Yeah.
carry that irrespective, even if you're married or not married. Because then there are many people who wait for their marriage in order to enjoy sex. But
Yeah.
then they carry that weight of
Yeah.
shame and guilt, and
Yeah.
then it's still not happening. And not everybody, like you said, has the privilege to unlearn these things, because that unlearning happens through conversation, happens through being exposed to the right kind of content, happens,
Yeah.
it also happens when you have that realization.
Yeah.
And maybe people don't have that realization often or
Not
always.
well. I also felt like it was confused. It was mixed signals for me because on one end they used to show us on television that like sex is kind of performative. Like if you even just like your foray into like pornography, even for example, like figuring that out, you always see the woman like really enjoy it and like really be into it, like even in the movies, if not extreme as pornography, you like see it in the movies that she's like enjoying herself. And when I didn't enjoy myself, I was like, wait, this is weird, this is not anticipated. So like
Yeah.
the performance bit of it, it was like you needed to be this virginal person, but although when it came to sex you had to be like you had to know what you wanted, which was like how does
Yeah.
it fit into like how do I know what I want if I've never had it, but you also expect
Had
me to
it
want
before.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So very
Yeah,
good.
I don't mean to probe further into this, but then did your first experience then kind of define a lot of your sexual experiences that happened later on, and that was more traumatic as well as
Yeah,
you?
definitely.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
It was crazy. So for sorry, this is
There's a
construction.
drilling noise.
So for me it was like to be honest, I think what I didn't feel and why it was traumatic is I didn't feel entitled to pleasure. My entitlement
Mhm.
has come a year or so ago. Like it truly has. Like I wish I could tell you, oh, in my late 20s I discovered. No, I feel like I'm almost now, like at 28, I can tell you that I know what I like, or I can understand like what my body does. But when I was
Mm.
young, with that particular experience, it was um, a lot of, okay, so like what, I mean, I'm completely fine talking about it. Just trigger warning for anyone who's, been a part of a abusive situation or sexual assault of any kind. But for me, what it was he would coerce me into like pleasing him, because the way I grew up was that you serve the man, and the way that sex is sold to us is you finish him, like he needs to finish. There is no, they have
Yeah.
like this biological ability to just, there's like this big whatever moment for them.
Yeah,
And
sex ends when the man finishes. And for a very long time, that was my idea of it too. Yeah,
exactly
sex is over when the man has.
finishes exactly.
Yeah.
And this guy particularly was abusive, and also abusive and mixed with like narcissism and all that good, jazz. And for me,
Mm.
was I thought I was in love with him, which for me it was the first time I ever had like strong feelings for someone. It was the first time I ever like kissed somebody, and I was like 2021. So in India, there was no kissing happening. There was no like, I would cry just like if I hugged a boy, I would be so afraid. I'd just be like, my mom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so with him it was just that exactly that happened, where it would be a lot about him, and he would make it feel like, because I think particular to my situation, sex also has a power dynamic attached to it, especially in situations of abuse and or like
Mm.
the wrong partner. And that
Mm.
like something I wasn't familiar with at 2021. I didn't, because I didn't have the knowledge and I didn't have the self-confidence that probably now I do, because at the time I was like, oh, there's a boy who likes me, and that's it. Like that's all I should ever aspire to have, is a boy who likes me.
True.
And
Yeah.
when that happened, I thought,
Yeah.
okay, everything to keep it together and like be with him.
Yeah.
which led to very confusing ways of thinking about pleasure, which means, like I would do everything, but he would not do anything. And I thought that was how it was. You guys don't have.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I think many men still do think that way. And
Yeah.
then now that we're talking about abuse, I think a lot of the fear for me
Mm.
with respect to sex also came because the moment you get your periods,
Yeah.
you are kind of indirectly told that there's a potential for
Yeah.
abuse,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
irrespective, not only when you get your period, even when you're younger,
Yeah.
maybe men are or younger boys are not have don't have to go through the same conversation always. Of course, depends upon their guardians, but women for sure, they it's kind of instilled in you
Yeah.
that
You-
sex equals to potential for abuse. And I
Exactly.
think that's that other fear
Yeah.
also that was ingrained in me with respect to fear. I didn't know what abuse was and what it meant and what it could be. And it's just so nuanced and nobody teaches you that.
Yeah.
I still don't know what's the right age. And I'm just so fearful of being a parent if I ever do be. I don't know what the right age is, what the right conversation is, but it's so necessary. I don't know how parents are doing it right now. So.
Same. And I'm like, I mean, like,
Mm.
it's so crazy how my mind immediately went to like, when you asked me about sex, it went to like this, because you asked me before, like, does it affect, your future, current
Yeah.
relationship now? And like, I'm someone who, through the process of learning, I look back now and I wish that there was some perspective or some conversation happening around it. And like, it was accessible to me when I was younger, because maybe
Yeah.
would have had like at least some perspective about what is safe consensual sex, or what is pleasure, and like how I'm entitled to it as a woman. And it's not just something that we're just kind of thrown into the dark the moment we get like reach sexual maturity. It's a bad, like, vicious world with sex, and the way that women are portrayed. It's like it kind of like there's the fun part of sex, and then as women there's a very real, like, other part of sex, which is in
Mm.
everyone's sex life, men included. I feel like they're not exempt from their own toxic, like, masculinity, where they have to like have sex in order to be considered a, attractive guy, which is so
Okay.
fucked. I feel like we're all sort of victims to it. Women, however, in media, unfortunately, in my opinion, we're just like, we're just, we're objects of sexual pleasure. We're not humans. We're just
Yeah.
orifices.
Yes, and that's what leads to my second question to you, actually, like talking about, this objects of pleasure. This is a pretty uniform concept in any culture that you go. Of course, it's varying degrees that it
Yeah.
happens. But do you feel, because you've lived outside as well,
Mhm.
um, and this could be a limited understanding of it because I think you've just lived in the United States, or
Mhm.
have you moved around a bit?
No, just the US.
It's just the States. So it's between India and the States, and I could probably give a European perspective to it as well. Do you think sex is a much more tabooized? I don't know if that's a word. Is it much more of a taboo in an Indian context compared to outside, in your
Yeah,
experience?
in my experience, yeah. In fact, I don't want to say that the West doesn't have their own problems when it comes to like women empowerment and sex. I think they are in many ways ahead of us as a culture in the conversation. They have their own, problems, like Roe versus Wade, for example, that just happened recently.
Yes.
It's I think it's kind of just the conversation around women and their bodies, and sexism and misogyny in general. In our
Mm.
culture, what I think had an additional sort of, I guess, negative experience for women is the religious basis. And I don't want to say that it's like one particular religion. I think it's like many, many religious, like, fabric that we're kind of born into. But actually,
Yeah.
not necessarily religious, mostly to do with the misogynistic way of portraying women as virgins, and like the good girl concept. The good girl,
Mm.
the sadi kind of, woman, the woman who is the high value woman. Like, I mean, it's kind of insane if we really like start to pull at that thread. I used to be someone, I remember even in school, I used to judge other women, and like, it
Oh,
took
yeah.
me while to like unlearn, to not like feel like women are competitors, but like women are like, we're friends. And I don't like, I don't,
Mhm.
there was a girl who like had a boyfriend, she would be like slut shamed because, you know, guys
Yeah.
and would be like, oh, she's kissing boys. Or like, I remember in 11th standard, I remember this so clearly. A friend of mine who was, so she was sexually progressive and she was like a close friend. We were a group and she told
Mm.
us, I remember she was like telling us how for her birthday, she's going to give him a blowjob. And at 16, 17, that was just like,
And I'm like, ooh,
you still
that, yeah.
if I'm like
I
now,
still mean that way. You can't help it. Yeah.
yeah, like if someone says that now, I'd be like, you waited this long, or like back then, I remember a friend of mine, she passed a comment behind my friend's back. She went, "I'm never going to have her juta," or her like basically, I'm never going to share. And I remember being like, damn. And so the thing is, everybody judged this girl. I mean, it's like we're all giving blowjobs now. It's not like it's a secret, but like I was like,
Let it be known.
let it be known. I was like, Judah is not even a like problem anymore. It's like without doing it, we've all had
But
enough.
I honestly feel Janani in at that age, I
Yeah,
could have possibly judged her too.
I
Very
did.
much.
I
I
did.
can, yeah.
I did. And like that was so common. Like even the way my mom would talk about, my mom would not even talk about sex. To be honest, the conversation happened apart from the it's sex on a, you know, so it's love on a physical level and then you only do it when you get married. There was no conversation about pleasure because my mother didn't know. She didn't even know what pleasure was till she got
Yeah.
married. And like
Yeah.
that I found out later on in life that she didn't even know. And so if she didn't know, how would I know? And
Yeah.
what narratives of judging women for being sexually empowered. And like the thing is, we villainize women like from childhood. Like so in school, if your hair was out, if your skirt was shorter than a like a little bit, like you as a young prepubescent child, people would make you
Mm.
feel were this like, I don't know, someone who's trying to titillate people or try to be like, you know, this.
Titillate men specifically or wanting attention of some
Yeah,
sort. Like attention is something that is wrong.
exactly.
What if I want attention? What
Yeah.
if that
What is wrong
my
if I
dad's telling me what, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Bye, Daddy. He doesn't know I'm in between of a live. He's been knocking. He's been, who's
Dude,
this? I'm in a live.
we're talking about sex and your dad's like, hello.
Stop. And he never does that, by the way. He's like, stop right now. My friends will be watching this. The family will be watching this. And you're talking about blowjobs in public. Yes, mom, I'm in a live, mom.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry,
Oh
Janani.
my god, not at all.
I'm
It's the
so
most
sorry.
ever. I
I'm
moved.
yeah, I'm visiting them and now they know about my sex life, so that's great.
Oh man,
Oh
that's
God.
another thing, finding a place to like if you live with your parents. But anyway,
Yes, I'm sorry I interrupted
no.
you.
What was I even saying? I forgot because I was like, blowjob. Oh yeah, so that's the school story,
The
and
idea of pleasure, yes.
yeah. Well, I think like we just understood that our existence was for men. Like our existence could not be autonomous to men. Everything we
Yeah.
did revolved around men, including our existence, including sex. So even as young girls, the fact that they would think less of a girl whose bra strap was showing, or they would think less of a girl who, you know, had a boyfriend. And like everyone did. Everyone was active sexually or otherwise, just dating. Everyone was doing it, but it became like this judgment, and I would,
Talking, yeah.
yeah, I would judge my
Yeah,
own.
talking about it would be very judgmental and I think it took for me to kind of leave the country to be okay. And that sounds sad, you know, because India is my home and it will always be my home. And this is a country that raised me and I will not take that away from it ever.
Yep.
But I found my voice. I found my uh, sexual empowerment. I found that 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 letting go of that inhibition
Yeah.
when I was away from the country. I have lived away from my parents. So, the other thing that you could say is that, when you're in a city where everybody knows you and they know your parents, etc., it could be a little bit difficult to feel
Yeah.
liberated, especially in an Indian cultural context, because it's about saving face. And if your
Correct.
daughter is talking about sex, it's wrong, etc.
Yeah.
But I've lived in other cities too. So I've
Yeah.
lived in other metro cities in India, and I didn't feel that liberation. So it had nothing to do with my parents being around, etc. It was
Yeah.
about the environment and the conversation happening around it. But I remember when I went there and
Mm.
when people would very casually talk about sex on the dinner table, and I'm not talking about sex on the dinner table with respect to their sexual lives,
Right.
but sex as a concept, as pleasure, as what it means for women and men, and philosophize it and intellectualize it,
Yeah.
and then eventually get about their own sex lives.
Yeah.
Eventually, that would happen.
Yeah.
But that's when I realized, like, oh, and I remember in such a conversation saying, and I'm a good 25 years old then, that
Yeah.
I'm a virgin
Yeah.
because I lied. I mean, I was
Oh,
that embarrassed. I'm like, okay, no, I don't want it. This was in the beginning when I didn't have an
no,
understanding of my own sexuality. And yeah, and
yeah.
the idea of an Indian woman is that, this timid
Yeah.
girl who
The
waits, and like,
docile. Yeah.
very docile.
I am none
And,
of that.
she doesn't,
By nature, I'm like loudmouthed. Like I will
yeah,
argue, and I always felt like I'm like, should I be playing coy? Should I be playing like, like I'm not that. That's not a.
do you feel you go back to that sometimes? I sense, like, depending on who is in front of me, and that's so embarrassing. Like, depending on who's in front of me, I go like, oh yes, or or I am just more open. It's like an energy. Okay, that also goes back to the patriarchy. It's like, okay, what does this man feel like?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you
It's
know.
the same thing I do, and it's like no judgment to women who are more like submissive or docile or whatever, right? Like you can be who
Yeah,
you are, but there is one like portrayal of women in the media or in the industry or the way we look at women that it's like the woman who like is adjusting, the woman who never has any demands, the woman who is like always listening to what her elders tell her or always listening to like what her any guy who's telling her something or is being like a toxic piece of shit, like it's for her good. And I still
yeah,
have friends who are dating people that pass that fucking comments that I'm like, what is wrong with you? How are you like
yeah.
who's I'm telling you for your good. I'm being protective. And as
Mhm.
what like confuses me is I think like I've been indoctrined into that dynamic between a man and a woman where I
Yeah.
do be rescued sometimes. I do like to be like, pursued, and I also like to be like told what to do. But then I'm like, yeah, I mean, like in a healthy way. Like I would like to like
Yes.
have them.
There's like a 10-minute window. I will allow this to happen,
Yeah,
and then I'm gonna go back
yeah. It's so
to
true.
being this.
It's so true.
Yes.
What a guy likes, and I'm like, how can I be the closest to that person? Because for a long time I thought I needed to be different in order to be accepted by the man, and now I'm just like, fuck it, like they don't know what they want either. I don't know what I want, they don't know what they want, whatever. Why am I
Exactly.
to be someone
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, I mean, and you do talk about this, right? You do talk about what men want, what women
Yeah.
want, or what you want specifically also, in your Instagram stories. By the way, everybody should check that out. You should check Janani's. Seriously, Janani, I feel like, oh God, I relate to this girl. And it's funny, but then it's sad at the same time. But, you know,
I know.
you do talk about your dating.
Yeah.
You do talk about your dating life, and you do talk about your sex life
Yeah.
openly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you do talk about your sexuality and your sensuality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So do you think that it required a lot of work? And what was that work that you had to go through? Like you said, the last year is when
Yeah.
you actually felt sexually empowered.
Mm-hmm.
So before you got there, was it like a crippling sense of disempowerment? Or was there a lot of internalization and introspection that required? Because I'm telling you, the reason why I'm asking you this question is
Yeah.
I want to be able to openly talk about this
Yeah.
and make people uncomfortable because
Yeah.
my fear is making people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's my assumption you went through the same things. I just wanted to understand, talking
Yeah.
about your dating and sex life, was it, process or?
So for me, it was different. Like it was slightly. I think it's kind of like a blessing now looking back at it because it's like how I am now. And I was, in two minds, like ever revealing or talking about this, but it is what happened to me. So I grew up um, I wasn't like, oh, okay, I grew up with people being very critical about my body. So I was on I don't want to like label it and say plus size or whatever, but it was a marginalized body. So I didn't have the skinniest body. I didn't have the most like, I was always kind of like a more softer, rounder kid. And I got bullied a lot in school for it. I have a very, mother who I love, but was very critical about my physique and my, body. And my entire life, my body was a conversation with people, whether it was doctors, whether it was family members, whether it was people in my life. It was always like, you're so beautiful if you just lost weight. Like it was always like this kind of conversation.
Yeah,
It's always
yeah.
like this giant, power that was taken away from me was my body and like being in touch or in tune with my body. And it took a lot of me thinking that I wasn't entitled to feeling beautiful. And like I think that's not exclusive to anyone with a heavier side body. I think that's for anyone in general. Like women in general have like some glaring insecurity. You're too dark, you're too fair, your nose is this way, your eyebrows are this way, your hair is too curly. It's like endless ways of just staring women down, especially with their body. So for
Mm,
me, when I like sex was a way to like feel good about my body, to be honest. It was like a moment when someone desired my body. And it was the moment where I could like desire my own body. Because for so long I was conditioned to feel like I'm not allowed to desire this body because it's not good enough in like some capacity. And that I think had a lot to do with me rebelling. Like I felt like it was a rebellion where I was like, no, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm sorry. I'm going to enjoy. Stop. I'm trying to talk about my body. I'm going to enjoy sex. I'm going to enjoy my body. And also, part of it was feeling beautiful. Because I think, like, a
mm,
lot of the times women, like, are told they're not beautiful. And, like, beautiful
mm,
women. All women are beautiful. But there's always something they will nitpick, something they will find. So, sex for
yeah.
me, when I started having it, I think I didn't enjoy it, or I mean, I enjoyed it, but I think a lot of it had to do with how I felt about my body. And for me, sorry, my phone on charge,
It was at a call.
but
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Sorry,
I lost you.
so much is happening. Sorry, but I was saying that like
This is
sex
a
is
reflection of our society. Nobody wants women to have a conversation about their
I
bodies. And
I know they're just trying to like
they're talking about the sex. Yes,
I'm
let's
so
drill holes in the wall.
annoyed. I know I'm so annoyed at this drilling. I'm like, what is going on? Sorry, while I adjust my wire. But yeah, so that was at least a way for me to feel good. And again, same thing it happened because I went abroad and my friends would like I bought my first sex toy when I was abroad. Game changer, complete game changer. I could at this point hook up with any guy ever I wanted. Just like just be like, here's the vibrator, please continue. I was like, but it was a journey. It was 100% a journey. It wasn't like the first time I had sex, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
I hated it. But yeah, that at least that was the internal journey, so to speak, was how do I love my own body? How do I accept love for this body? Which I feel like that was a very hard thing to do. Is if a guy found me attractive, I would be a little bit confused. I'd be like, wait, really? Are you sure? Like, that kind of thing. But
Mm,
for me, it was like,
yeah.
no, he can be. There are people can find me attractive, and I can enjoy my body for whatever it is. That was like a huge part of my sexual journey, at least. Yeah.
Ah, but that is so true what you said. I think in that moment,
Mhm.
in that cusp of when you're about to have sex, is when the way you look doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's like how your body is doesn't matter. Your
Mm-hmm.
body matters, but how
Yeah.
it is doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
And
No.
then in that moment, there's such full acceptance
Yep.
of both the bodies, of you, of your partner, and the
Exactly.
partner of yours.
Yep.
And yeah, it never struck me that is the moment
Yeah.
when you're completely yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
I
it's
don't
not
even
even
like.
the act of it; it's the moment when it's about to happen. Is
Yeah.
when it's yourself, and you
Yeah.
have no
And
inhibitions. कि
nothing at
यहाँ
all.
तक आ ही गए, like you're till here. So
And
you know
guys don't
what?
care either. Like guys, I feel
Yeah.
like I used to think like, oh my god, he's gonna like see the roles, or he's gonna see this weird like whatever thing I have, and like doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't matter at
Yes.
all, because at that moment it's so much more than just.
Yes.
I mean, the physical is part of it, but it's. I don't think a guy's ever stopped and gone, no thanks. I saw this role of yours. I'm done. I'm out. Like that never happened. Thank God. It shouldn't either. But
Yeah.
never personally.
And I'm digressing a little bit
No,
because
please. I feel like I was just
um,
all over the place.
but how's dating for you? Because I was talking to one of my friends
Yeah.
recently. We were just talking and we were just trying to decode apps. And I know
Yeah.
you do that. And we were
Yeah.
just trying to decode dating apps. And firstly, as an interculturalist for me, and my biggest regret is I didn't use an app when I was in France. And I think I should have, just
Mm.
to kind of sociologically compare and understand it. Because
Yeah.
the moment you move even state in India,
Yeah.
you have like, oh my God. The way if you study the kind of display pictures they put up or their bios are
Yeah.
so different. So I
It's
can't
crazy.
imagine I can't imagine different countries.
Yeah.
But and Tinder is culturally different, and
Yeah.
Bumble is culturally different, and
Yeah.
Hinge is
Yeah.
culturally different. Then just navigating through three
Yeah.
apps is so difficult,
Oh
let
my
alone
God.
the amount of men that there are
Yeah.
on the app.
It's hard.
And not to say that people don't find
I know. It's
art.
not even. I'm just like.
No, I can just the process. I haven't. But what are you talking about,
No,
brother?
I agree with you, but I'm like, I haven't been this lucky. There have been people who are like, oh yeah, we like are getting. I mean, it
Who are these
happens.
people?
I went on a date with this guy, which is why I will never go to Bar Stock Exchange ever in my life. No offense to Bar Stock Exchange, but like all the dates there are such garbage. But he got married like a week after like going on a date with me, and they have like this like they have a hashtag. They have like swiped right in their hashtag. I was like, I fucking hate this. Like I'm like the halfway house before like I find them forever. And like this is the proposal, and I was like, oh, this sucks. But
Yeah, I don't know what people are looking for. Last year, I found this bio that said, "I um I'm already married. I'm waiting for the paid subscription on Bumble to end, and that's why I'm here."
sorry.
Your phone couldn't handle that. He was waiting for his paid subscription to
To
end,
end.
and
Oh, suspicious.
he was already married, and that's what was on his bio. And I
I don't
don't
know if
know
I'd
what
be.
Chinese women actually swipe right on such men.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know if I'd be okay if my husband did that. Like, if he was like, oh, I'm just waiting for the subscription to end, I'd be like, whatever, count it as a loss, delete the app. Like, what's wrong? Paying for, like, no,
Yeah, you
that's
spent
cheating.
1 crore on the wedding, but you're
Yeah.
like, no, I will wait for Bumble subscription to end first.
Can you
I can
imagine?
understand.
I'm not dating. I mean, I feel like there might be like some Bumble matches of mine watching this. I'm not trying to saw a few pop up, so we don't know. Maybe. But hello. I'm just kidding. But for me, dating. Okay, I'm so annoyed with this vibrations like right now because I'm trying to talk about something and I want to be like focused, and this like drilling is happening, not the good kind of drilling, but
Not the good kind, at least.
so for me, like dating now. Okay, I do this like kind of toxic thing. I'm not gonna lie. I've never been. I don't know if it matters. I don't think it matters right now, but like who knows? I have not been in any kind of long-term relationship. Like I've been in relationships, but because I moved around places, I've never actually been like committed to someone for longer than like 3 to 4 months, give or take. And I've always kind of had like an insecurity about that. So for me, dating was like when I first came back to Mumbai, I was like, all right, it's time to find a boyfriend. Like it's time to lock it down. It is time to get married. Because the moment I hit 23, 24, people started getting married. Like it was this new, like, I don't know, end or something. And I was getting very like anxious because for me, is that annoying you? Sorry, the
Not me, because I want to know what happened after.
So I would like go on these dates and I would not give, honestly, would not give a shit about compatibility. I would just be like, is this someone who wants a relationship? Because what I would meet all the time is someone who wanted something casual. And part of me still kind of doesn't fully understand it. I understand like why, you know, people want something casual or don't know yet. Like I get it. Because people aren't sure or people are emotionally unavailable or, you know, have their own trauma and they have their own baggage. So I can always be empathetic of that. But for me specifically, I was like, I would like a boyfriend. And so I started like dating with this like goal in mind that I'm like, this is it. And I'm a stubborn person. And so for me, like when I get like, I want something, I need to have it. But what I didn't pay attention to was, is this person the right person? Is there a compatibility? Like that's very hard to figure out sometimes on dating apps unless you meet them and like, because the thing is, it's like forced, right? Like you don't naturally meet this person in your surrounding. You kind of orchestrate this meeting and then you go to a bar that you don't like. I don't go to bars unless it's for a date. Like I'm not someone who frequents bars, but we will like go to a bar and then put alcohol in the mix and then all of your judgment just goes flies out the window. And I ended up I mean, I feel like what I hate and what I have recently found out, and I don't know how to think about, I'm still struggling with it, is the option for like people I feel like are spoiled for choice in dating apps, like especially guys. And I don't know if it's, I look at it more like psychologically. I'm like anthropologically, are men wired to want like many things? Like I get into that spiral where I'm like, we've been taught that like a guy wants to fuck as many people as he can and a woman has to just like be with one person. So I don't know, I hate it. To be honest, I like hate it. But I go up and down. Like sometimes I'll be in the mood to date and I'll go on a bunch of good dates. And guys are great. It's not like, I don't want to say like guys suck. I don't think guys suck at all. But it is hard to find genuinely compatible people or people who are open to giving it a shot, because dating apps have created this culture of, well, if it's not you, there's someone else. And there's always going to be someone else. And there's always going to be like the next best thing, which is the hard part.
Love feels a bit disposable now.
Exactly.
So you're not spending enough time with one person to know that if they can, Vikrant is like, same.
Yeah.
So so I mean, I digress there a bit, so sorry. So shame, like I was speaking before when we started off the conversation, like shame and fear and sex are so interconnected, at least for a woman, because at a very earlier age we are told about that.
Yeah.
Do you, as a mature woman now, I don't know if you still connect shame and fear to sex, or are you in a space where now you're like, okay, now I'm liberated, I'm not going to associate, because you also spoke about your body and overcoming that.
Yeah.
So do you feel that you're not fearful of, by the way, I was very scared of penises.
Same.
Still am
They look
sometimes.
scary. They're scary
I don't know if it's about
creatures.
it's the idea of it, or also probably who it is attached to as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, honestly, it is scary. They're veiny. They're like long. Hopefully, it's a woman. You're like, what is that? Why is that like attached to you? Yeah.
It's still a very new concept.
It is.
So, do you still? I don't want to ask you. Are you still afraid of penises? But do you still associate sex with fear and shame?
With fear and shame, 100%. Like, no lie. Shame is more. I work on it consciously now. Shame typically comes around when so like if I've had sex with someone, I automatically go into this. So so I'm someone who is okay with having sex on like the second date or the third. Like I'm not really someone who's like, oh, this X amount of dates have to happen before like we get physical. So I used to be ashamed of that because I used to think that I have quote unquote given up the goods, or I've kind of like, just whatever like was valuable about me, this person already possesses. So why would he ever want to like date me because he got what he wanted, which is what like you always hear when you're like someone who is open to having sex immediately, or like less, you're not like withholding it, because we're taught to like withhold sex from men in order for them to like be interested, which is so toxic, because I don't think that has anything to do with the level of interest in a person. I think interest is interest, and if someone wanted to have sex with you and you had sex with them and they don't want to talk to you again, that's what they always wanted. I don't think there's like a deep psychology to it. But that's the shame that happens, is like if I hook up with someone, and like I live alone, I have had guys over, and I've had like either one night stands, or I've had like guys that I've been casually just seeing, and the shame was that I was less than. And I have to tell myself at that moment, I like rewire consciously that it's not that I'm less than. I had a need, I fulfilled that need. And that need could be many things. That need could be, sometimes I just want male attention. I'm not in a relationship right now. And like it's nice to go on dates. It's nice to get the like, male attention. And it's nice to have sex, because sex is fun if you just enjoy it. If the chemistry is natural with someone, if it feels safe, most importantly for me, if it's safe, if you can have a basic level of trust, and if it's, also protection, STD, like condoms, birth control, all of that, you can enjoy sex without like the feeling of, oh, I am this, loose woman, or I am this damaged woman that like nobody wants. Or it's empowering, honestly, to have sex and enjoy it casually. The fear, I think, comes from like the only time I think fear was associated for me was if I felt unsafe. And like those situations can come across where you do feel unsafe, and like you just instinctively know that this is not like, this person is weird and this person has like off vibes. But I will say, your gut instinct kind of as a woman just is so attuned to pick up weird, creepy people. So but I also want to say, weird, creepy people in my life have been people I know, not people I meet like as strangers. So weird, creepy people have always been like a coworker, or someone who is like a boss of mine, like someone who's in a position of authority. So they've always been like weird and creepy. So that's the only time I guess like fear, because I have had a coworker or someone I used to work with be very sexually forward, and it was very inappropriate. And but he like got me the job I had, so it's like this another conversation. So it was, it's just that's the only time I
Yeah,
guess
I think that power dynamics and
yeah,
sex is another conversation.
yeah,
Also because,
exactly.
but the way the world is right now, there are more men in positions of power compared to women. So I don't know whom to ask if
Yeah,
women, compared to men, do take advantage
yeah,
of them being in a powerful position or not. Maybe there are
definitely.
exceptions where that does happen,
Yeah,
but I've heard so many women feeling unsafe
yeah.
at
It's
their
always someone
workplace.
Yeah,
And that's something that and that hurts me sometimes, because
yeah,
that's somewhere you go to find independence,
yeah,
because
yeah,
where you're finding your financial independence,
yeah,
and then you kind of feel trapped because you don't know what to do about it, because you're
yeah,
not even equipped with the tools,
yeah,
because it doesn't have to be sexual abuse,
yeah.
right? Any kind
Correct.
of
Power dynamic
touch
abuse.
that's not welcomed can
Yeah,
also make you feel uncomfortable, and you're not equipped with the tools for how to deal with it.
yeah,
So that is an
yeah,
disempowering place to be in.
yeah.
And
But
yes, please.
no, but like but meeting people on Bumble, and like going on dates, the way that I approach it is not just Bumble, like all Tinder. No offense to Tinder, I've worked with Tinder. It's like kind of garbage. Sorry, just like between us, I'm like, I don't really go on Tinder. Like Tinder is like not my place. But like Bumble and I do go with the intent of like meeting someone and like seeing if we can be friends. And then again, natural chemistry, all of that happens. And the thing that I've learned is like just learning about your own body through different multiple partners for me and how my life turned out was super empowering, because I learned about so many different ways that I enjoyed sex, or I was enjoying my own body. And I think that can happen with one partner also. I don't think you need to have multiple partners in order to like learn about your body. My situation happened as such that I wasn't in a long-term relationship, so the way that I learned about my body was multiple people. And for the most part, like I dated American guys, I've dated Indian guys, and across the board it's been like kind of not that bad at all. Like there's nothing I look back and I'm like, ooh, I wish I didn't do that, because each of them had a learning, and some of them had like maybe like lessons in the sense of like what I definitely do not want in a guy, or like what I definitely do not enjoy in the bedroom for me specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, so like talking about lessons and liberation, you know, Esther Perel, she's this psychotherapist that I really like. I don't know if you know her. And she had mentioned that contraception in the 60s was something that really liberated women.
Yep.
Because then when there was contraception, the idea of sex changed. Then you're having sex for pleasure. You're deliberately stopping the conception of a child. The reason for you having sex is different. And that really empowered women, you know, in the 60s. I was wondering, what do you think? What's going to be the next step of sexual empowerment for women? Yeah, I mean, because now, you know, we are okay with the idea, at least, of women having sex. Like, we have accepted it. You all have urges. Okay.
We get it.
Yeah, we get it.
I think it's...
So...
What do I think? So birth control is something I'm super passionate about, because I understood birth control, or the option even, that like happened when I went abroad. So I wasn't even aware of what birth control was, or that we could protect ourselves from not getting pregnant, and condoms are only, you know, these much, like 87% effective, which is still insane to me that it's like only that much effective. So something I'm passionate about is birth control. However, in our country, I think we are a ways to have that conversation, even though I'm passionate about it. Majority of my friends say that the only way they like avoid pregnancy is the pull-out method, which blows my mind, because it's like not reliable, but however has worked for people. So I'm like, you know, I mean, you're lucky till you're not anymore. And like, fortunately, abortion is easily accessible in our country. There is stigma, but like I spoke to my gynecologist about this, and I wanted to inform myself. So the cost of like a pill abortion, for example. So again, trigger warning for anyone who is triggered by abortions and conversations around this. But it's 5,000 rupees to get a pill abortion, 4,000 to 5,000. And that's under 10 weeks of pregnancy. And over 10 weeks, which then gets into the surgical abortion side of things, is about 12 to 15,000. Now, for certain sections of society, that's not a lot. For certain sections of society, that can be a lot. But the thing is, it's not like ridiculous. And I was talking to my, because I'm on birth control, I'm on the copper T, I'm not on a hormonal, I'm on a non-hormonal IUD. And I went to her, and even then, even though it was my gynecologist, she still recommended I have my first child before I get like birth control. And I was like, now I'm trying to avoid first child. Like, I don't want child. I would like to not have child. And like, I don't know. Like, I don't.
That's the whole point of this. That's why I'm paying you.
Like, you want me to like have one child and then regret and be like, yeah, never again? Like, no, I don't want it. Like, I want to give myself the mental relief. So she was saying how because abortion is so quote unquote cheap for at least our sections of society, which is a more privileged economic section of society, women abuse it. And they don't talk about birth control, because it's, you know, go in, get the pill abortion and whatever. Now that is a separate conversation. For our country, I think like what is the new revolution that I am seeing is female pleasure. So like vibrators, for example. I don't even think like sex toys was a conversation at all when I was growing up. I was like, what is a sex toy? What does this do? Why is it vibrating? And how is that going to make me feel good? And now we have like intimate wellness brands coming up. We have sexual wellness brands coming up that are selling products for vaginas and for vulvas and whatever, like for catered specifically to women's pleasure. And I think that's exciting, but I think still a lot of information is missing. But contextualizing that information also is important, because I feel like you can be intellectual, but it's very Indian of us to be very like intellectual and philosophical about like the conversations around pleasure. Me too.
It's like your mom and me. We're the same.
And I love it because it's like how our culture is. But I think sometimes destigmatizing it is as important, like because you know, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I didn't finish, and I want to be able to tell the guy I didn't finish without like worrying about like egos or whatever, right? So I think that's probably one conversation that's happening, is the destigmatization around female pleasure, and then the second one is like prioritizing female pleasure. And what was the biggest like weirdest thing for me was I used to think that guys were like just all about their pleasure. Guys are equally about like pleasing their partners and like, you know, wanting women to have fun.
A lot of the ego is driven by that as well. I feel.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
They're like, I'll, you know, make you wet, and you're like, oh, well, just relax, like it's fine. But yeah,
it's a good thing though. I'm not complaining.
That is true.
So men are feeling, and it's just so odd that female pleasure and patriarchy and masculinity and feeling emasculated are so connected. Of course, I'm just talking of this from a very personal bias, like a very heterosexual way as well.
Right, exactly, right.
But yeah, that's the perspective I'm speaking from, and I'm more than happy if somebody here has another perspective. But yeah, like men are slowly feeling less emasculated when women are asking for what they want.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's a beautiful revolution. And this is the kind of revolution that's happening with both men and women together, you know, going towards that.
Yes.
I think the other thing I think that's happening, and you know, conversation happening in very small sections of society, I feel, like just the construct of what a relationship should be.
Yeah.
You know, being monogamous. And a lot of people are talking about, like, you know, polygamy. Or polyamory. I think that as a millennial to me was a very new concept, and you know, trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
I still don't have an opinion of it being right or wrong. Yeah. But then I'm just glad that the conversation is happening, because people try to intellectualize that too. Like, you know, physiologically, we're not supposed to be with one partner, etc., etc. But I think that's one thing that's really changing too.
Right. I agree. I think I have friends who are in polyamorous relationships, friends that identify as non-binary, like all of this conversation that's happening, pronouns, everything that I feel like, I mean, I definitely am not like entitled to have an opinion on like anything that's not my inherent experience. I mean, I can have an opinion, but I feel like it's better for them to speak. But I just do know that like looking at relationships and looking at the generational change just outside of like monogamy or whatever, I think the whole way of relationships and the dynamic is changing, especially with women getting more and more empowered and women having jobs. Because even it's still hard for me to think that even my mother was limited. My own mother, who is educated and who is in her own way empowered, still had to like, you know, didn't have like, she was like one of the first generations of women in our country that was educated and that like could get a job. And then now it's our generation, and it's challenging the dynamics both sexually and otherwise, like just the sex dynamics of men and women have changed. And so now I think our generation specifically, like millennials, we're kind of just like, what is happening? Because we want the traditional, because we're used to seeing that. But then the new world demands like very different things. Because I'm like,
it's confusing. That's so right. It's so confusing. It's like, within it's an internal struggle. Like, what do I want?
Yeah.
And we're in that age where we're all
accessible. Yeah.
and we are at that age now, millennials, where we are nesting, at least the ones who are not married. We are nesting, and then we want that relationship, but we don't want it. We want a child, but we don't want it. Biology is going, hormones are going here and there. But yeah, I completely understand that.
Hormones are the worst.
I took up so much of your time.
Not at all. I could go on. I was like, keep
oh
going.
God, because I'm loving this conversation.
I know.
Because I don't talk about it. My hands are not cold anymore, Janani.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable. Thank you for that.
Of course. I can keep talking about this. I'm like, hour is nothing for me. I can just yap on about things. So I'm totally fine.
I do want to ask you one thing though before I let you go. I always end my conversations with this question.
Mm-hmm.
If there is one thing that you'd like to change, either within yourself or outside of yourself, what would it be?
Oof. I think I'm now consciously trying to not care about what people think and not care about people's opinions, and anything I say or anything I do or even content that I create, I ask myself before, what would I say or what would I do if I wasn't afraid of anything? If there was no consequences, if I wasn't afraid of anything, what would I do? And I'm trying to that's how I'm trying to operate and show up in the world, because for such a long time I've been playing second, or I've been playing lesser than, because A, maybe I was scared of my own potential, and B, because I thought my potential is determined by people and people's opinions, but it isn't. And I think I am drawn to people who challenge the norm, or who are brave and take their own step, doing your own thing, launching your own business, or doing your own content, or having these kind of conversations is hard, because you're constantly thinking, who the fuck am I till I have these conversations, or who do I think I am? But there's something in your soul that's I just want to. And I just, this is something like Phoebe Waller-Bridge said, who I love her, writing and her content, but she always said she writes with thinking, if I wasn't afraid, what would I want to say? And I feel that's just the biggest change that I at least I'm trying to incorporate.
I'm gonna write that down. If I wasn't afraid, what would I do and how would I do it? Seriously, because I think that courage is something that we're all seeking at this point. We just don't know how to operate. And one of my friends, Anish, she had mentioned that bravery or being courageous doesn't mean that there's absence of fear.
Yes. Ooh,
bravery doesn't mean absence of fear. Bravery means you still operate, and how you operate under that fear. Maybe fear will never disappear.
Right.
But they coexist at the same time.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think one thing that I realized was you do serve the world or culture or whatever you want to say by showing up as authentically yourself. Because I think there's so many people who, I was surprised myself when I would have conversations that I wish someone would just have said, or someone would have just spoken about it. When they have, I felt so vindicated. I was so okay, I'm not the only one, and we're not the only ones who are experiencing it. But some of us have to just, it comes with a cost. I definitely feel it comes with, like you said, the fear is 100% part of the deal. But I think it takes a few, it takes a lot to just decide, honestly, this is who I am and this is what I want to say. It doesn't matter. The fear is just making sure I'm safe. So it's thank you, fear, for being here. But also, this is what I think it's just, you're just meant to do what you're meant to do on this earth. And I'm going on. I feel I'm just where is the end of that sentence, Janani? I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that.
My God,
yeah.
And
Janani, thank you.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say thank you for doing this and having these conversations. I was so honored that you wanted to talk to me. I was like, oh my God, me? No.
I had to, because I want to speak what she's speaking, so I might as well, I don't say it and I ask her to come.
Anytime. I'm that friend. I will say what you don't want to say.
But thank you so much. I feel a little bit more braver today. And I hope that people, like, the thing is that so many people got involved in this conversation. That included my parents and your neighbors.
Yeah.
And we were not alone in this conversation in the sense,
No.
of course, there are people viewing this, but
I love it.
yes,
I
love
it
this.
should have been. Yeah, because I'm like, my neighbors probably are like, because any single woman who stays on her own, they're like, what a slut. And I'm like, well, yes, I am.
I'm having slutty conversations.
Yeah. I'm a slut for my vibrator. Okay.
Which we could hear, by the way. That's why they were
The drilling. I was like, you don't know.
This is how we feel.
Yeah.
Oh God, we're on a tangent. We should meet and talk about this
Yes,
over
I
a
was just
glass
gonna
of
say,
wine
let
for
us hang
sure.
out because you are in Mumbai, so for me, anytime.
Yes.
I was
Okay.
like, we'll talk about that later. I'm like gonna dox your address. I'm like, where do you live? Hong Kong. Yeah.
Thank you so
so
much,
much
Janani.
for
Thank you so
having
much for
me.
your time.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
You
And
are.
I hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.